Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time. I've heard some great things about you. I've got to ask you about the picture behind you. Where does that come from? Who did it? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, that's a painting of yours truly that was done by my friend Mr. Shavaria Art. You can find him on Instagram at Mr. Shavaria Art. He's a really talented painter. He's done a lot of artwork for us at our gym, Bobby's Boxing Club in Laguna Beach. He does a lot of famous paintings of famous boxers and combat sports athletes. And after my last fight, he commemorated the event by doing this beautiful self-portrait here of yours truly. And it's my favorite, one of my favorite possessions. So
It's very cool.
yeah, he nailed it. So it's always in the backdrop for all of my, interviews and podcasts and such.
It's very interesting your path to becoming a bare knuckle fighter. I think everyone's path to becoming a bare knuckle fighter is interesting because it's so outside of the status quo. I read that you were a track athlete in college.
Correct. Yeah, I ran the 1 and the 2 mile race in college, and I was a decent runner. I wasn't setting the world on fire with my times or anything, but I was a good runner and a good athlete. I was in great shape, and I knew how to train like a professional from being on a collegiate sports team. And I was able to take what I learned about training and physical fitness and apply that to my combat sports career as I transitioned.
What college were you running at?
I just ran for a couple seasons at Saddleback College here in Orange County, California. And actually, I ended up dropping out of school, and I took up amateur boxing, and I've been doing it ever since. And that was about 10 years ago.
Was it kind of like, okay, I'm done with college? Was it just not the right fit? And then how did boxing kind of fit into your plans?
Yeah, I've never been very scholastic. I've never been much for hitting the books coming up as a kid. It just wasn't for me. I don't know if there was so much of a plan involved, but I dropped out of school. I started boxing. I liked doing that, so I started competing, started winning fights, and it became a full-time gig, working in the gym, training people, and training full-time. I won a couple of big tournaments with USA Boxing. I won the state championship 2 years in a row. And then I dabbled in officiating for a while with USA Boxing as a judge and referee at local events. And when the pandemic hit in 2020, and USA Boxing stopped putting on events, there was no fights in California or the United States at all for that matter. That's when we actually started boxing professionally in Mexico. And we had a couple fights down in Tijuana. And then that segued into the bare-knuckle situation when opportunities for that became available. And here we are. So still doing it.
I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear the distance running to boxing. It doesn't surprise me, though, because every boxer has to have phenomenal conditioning. Every boxer that I know all the way up through heavyweight goes anywhere from 3 to 6 miles on average. I mean, was that kind of like such an additive that you already had this phenomenal cardio and you were used to it? Was that something like, wow, this is a great transition, I can do this all day?
Yeah, absolutely. Having that, track and field background definitely was a huge advantage in transitioning over to boxing. A big part of any boxer's training regimen includes a lot of running, like you mentioned. And I think that the physical attributes of having fast feet, strong lungs, strong heart, and being able to move around the ring definitely was a huge advantage and definitely helped accelerate my ability to learn the sport and to pick it up quickly.
When you're going through the amateur ranks and you're having amateur bouts, as I know you're a two-time California state champion, did you find that a lot of these guys, going 3 rounds were getting exhausted and you had a lot left in the tank at the end of fights?
Yeah, definitely cardio is a weapon of mine, and it's something that I seek to weaponize in my fights. I definitely like to push a fast pace. and make guys try and keep up with me just like I would in a foot race. So I definitely think it's a huge advantage, and it's definitely a part of my style, and I definitely seek to implement both a fast and aggressive pace, as well as a lot of lateral footwork, movement in and out, side to side, as part of my style.
Did you have any combat experience before, kind of training after that college stage? Or was it just something like, hey, I'm going to try something new?
I mean, I did some wrestling camps as a kid, in the summers. I had a yellow belt in Taekwondo, uh, but nothing too serious or formal as far as combat sports training was concerned. Honestly, I had some friends that were taking lessons in a garage one day in my early 20s, and they brought me along. I beat up all my friends, and I had fun doing it, and I've been training ever since. So, like I said, there wasn't much of a plan. I didn't have a whole lot of formal training, but I'd always been a fan of the sport of boxing and MMA. I grew up watching boxing with my dad. I was a big fan of the UFC in high school and still to this day. And I think that definitely helped accelerate my learning curve as well. But yeah, after that first session, I've been in love with the sport, and I've been training full time ever since. So
When you were going through the amateurs, did you always have it in your mind that, okay, at some point I'm going to transition, I'm going to do this professionally?
honestly, no, actually, just the opposite. I always had it in my head that I wasn't going to turn professional. I didn't think there was any money in it. I didn't think it was, the best career choice. So I decided after winning the state championship for the second year in a row that I was going to retire from competitive boxing. And that's when I took up officiating. I did that for about a year. I worked 20 shows for USA Boxing. I did one event for the California State Athletic Commission, and I liked doing that. It was a valuable experience, and I learned a lot. But ultimately, it really didn't set my soul on fire the way that fighting and coaching does. And so when the pandemic hit and we saw there was an opportunity for us to start boxing in Mexico professionally, I changed my mind and I decided to pursue that more as a bucket list thing than anything, because I knew that I had the talent to do it and I wanted to do it while I was still young enough to do it. So we had a few fights in Mexico with great success, at which point we saw that there was an opportunity for us to do bare knuckle. And, I decided to go all in on this thing. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life. It's given me an entirely new career path. I'm having the time of my life traveling the country with bare knuckle promotions, watching some of the wildest fights you'll ever see, being a part of some of the wildest fights you'll ever see, and being a part of combat sports history at the reemergence of both the newest and the oldest sport in combative sports.
It takes a lot of guts to go from just alone from amateur to professional ranks, and then to go from professional boxing to professional bare knuckle boxing. What gave you the confidence to go from wearing gloves to not wearing gloves? Was that also kind of like a bucket list thing, like, shit, let's do it?
So I was watching YouTube one day, and by chance, a bare knuckle fight popped up on my algorithm, and I watched the fight, and I was like, "Wow, this is crazy! This is out of control!" Right? I watched the whole fight, and then of course the YouTube algorithm was like, "Oh, you like that? Here, watch another one." Boom! So it cues another bare knuckle fight, and another one, and another one, and I ended up watching about half a dozen bare knuckle fights in a row. At which point I thought to myself, Mark, you can beat a lot of these guys. Like I wasn't too impressed with the quality of the boxing of a lot of the people that I watched. And so that planted a seed in my mind. And then the very next day, just again by chance, I'm scrolling through my phone and I see that BKFC is having open tryouts in Tampa, Florida, 2 weeks from the day. And I just decided it was a sign from the universe. I bought myself a plane ticket and I flew across the country to attend the workouts. I was one of 5 people that won a contract with the promotion. And yeah, it's really all just seemed like fate, from from that point on, like, this is exactly what I was intended to do with my life. And, I think the results speak to that. Here we are, we're 2-0 with 2 sensational knockouts. We just had the knockout of the night award bonus. And now we're fighting in Miami, Florida on TV in one of the biggest bare knuckle events in the sport's history. And I couldn't be more proud and excited to be a part of it.
As far as the differences between boxing and bare knuckle, I mean, obviously they're numerous. What were the biggest changes for you, and how did you adapt to them?
Yeah, definitely a lot of changes from one sport to the next just by taking off the gloves. The rules are a little bit different too, and so that allows for a little bit different engagement, to clinch and punch and things like that. There's a little bit more grappling and wrestling. As far as my training is concerned, the primary changes that we made was that we switched from working with professional boxers to working primarily with MMA fighters as far as training partners and sparring partners are concerned. We brought in Ian Uncle Creepy McCall, the UFC veteran and former world champion, as a coach on my team to help with the dirty boxing, the clinch work, and things like that, to help add to that element of our game so that we're better suited for this bare knuckle style. So that'd be the primary changes. We brought on strength and conditioning wizard Corey Beasley, working with him to help add explosion and power to our game, to make us a little bit stronger in those inside clinches and things like that. So those are the main differences that we've made. But at the end of the day, boxing is boxing, with gloves or without. So the fundamentals don't change too much.
You were talking about your upcoming fight. For maybe some of the people that don't have that on their radar, when is it and who are you fighting in that one?
Yeah, so I'm going to be fighting August 27th. It's going to be BYB 11, the Brawl and Dural. It's going to be at Trump Tower Hotel in Miami, Florida. I'm fighting against YL Watson of Long Beach, California, coming out of Team Body Shop. He's a longtime MMA veteran who's fought some of the top guys in the sport. He's got one of the top coaches in MMA, being AJ McKee. So yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity. It's going to be a great fight. I'm going to put on a spectacular show. I'm going to knock this guy out and get the knockout of the night award bonus again. And I'm going to put my stamp on this event and put a stamp on my upcoming title bout, which will be following. I have every expectation of fighting in Tampa Bay, Florida for the world title at the end of your show, to pick up that world championship belt where I started this journey just less than 2 years ago. And I couldn't be more excited about it.
Fighting BYB is quite a bit different, I would say, even from other bare knuckle associations. You've got the mighty Trigon. I've talked with numerous BYB fighters about how that differentiates the fight game. How do you see that as making a difference in a fight?
It certainly makes a difference. The mighty Trigon is the world's smallest combat sports ring. It's 22 feet by 22 feet by 22 feet. I think it's a 60-degree angle in each corner. There's not a lot of room to move, and it doesn't take long to back your man up into a corner. So if you're an aggressive front foot fighter, it's great because it forces the action. If you're someone who likes to move and circle, it's definitely not going to suit your style. So it is definitely built for action and excitement, and it's, adds to the fun of the show and the promotion.
I know that especially in the Trigon, fights don't necessarily go incredible distances in this one. You being a guy that has such great cardio, maybe not moving around is so much of a tactic. Is it about punch output and speed at that point that you would say is your biggest two weapons in this?
Well, I definitely, as you alluded to, I'm a cardio athlete. I have great conditioning, but I also have tremendous power in both hands. I have 2 bare knuckle fights. I have 2 bare knuckle wins. I have 2 knockouts. I've scored 6 knockdowns in those 2 fights. I've scored 4 knockdowns with the right hand. I've scored 2 knockdowns with the left hand, including the Knockout of the Night award winner in Biloxi about 5 weeks ago. So I can punch with either hand. You know, you have to be concerned about my right, my left hook, uppercuts, my whole arsenal. So the Trigon suits my style because it allows me to cut the ring off quickly and land those power shots to finish the fight, you know, emphatically and violently like I always do.
There's all sorts of different types of punching power. Would you say that your punching power comes from your hand speed?
I would say that my punching power comes from my legs, and I would say that that power comes from my running background. You know, you can't throw a punch with much leverage sitting in a chair. Punches come from the ground up, and I attribute a lot of my leg strength and leg power to all of the running training that I've done over the years. And so I would say that my punching power comes from my base.
I know it's one thing to discover that you have a talent within a mile or a 2 mile that, hey, I can run, you know, a 4 minute mile better than other people can. Or when do you discover that, wow, I can really punch harder than most other humans?
You know, people have been telling me that since I started. Oh, you got heavy hands. I won my amateur debut by knockout, you know, as I suspected that I would. So I've always known that I could punch as soon as I put on the gloves and started doing this. And it's definitely something I've developed over time and worked on, you know, increasing. Like I said, we brought on a new strength and conditioning coach that's only going to add to the power output and my ability to get guys out of there. So
From here on out, obviously you've got your fights with BYB going on right now. Could you see yourself returning to boxing or even giving MMA a shot, or is the future kind of like wherever it takes you?
you know, I'm open to all opportunities and possibilities. So never say never. If the money's right, I'd certainly return to boxing. If the money's right, I'd certainly make my mixed martial arts debut. However, I just signed a long-term agreement with the BYB, and right now my entire focus is on winning a world championship in bare knuckle boxing. So I'm really excited to be here long-term with this promotion and to chase that for that world title.
Well, Mark, it's a very cool story, a very unique story. I'm a former track guy myself, so it's nice to see a track guy that's putting it down in the ring. So thank you so much for your time and best of luck.
Appreciate you, brother. What were your events?
I was a jumper, so I was a high jumper, triple jumper.
Okay, very cool. Right on, right on.
But I coached the sport for geez, 14 years as well. So
That's awesome. Yeah, track and field is a great sport. Any athlete could benefit from cross training, doing track and field, or you know, cross country in the off season. And I definitely attribute a lot of my success to that running background. So appreciate you, my fellow track and field brother. Thank you for the interview. It's been a pleasure. Anytime you need me, I'd be happy to come back on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mark.